Good morning, and thank you for joining us on Thriving on the Suncoast. I want to thank our listeners, our guests, our comfort keepers, and the public that voted for us in the Herald Tribune's People's Choice Award. Another winning year for us in the home care category. I want to thank you very much. I have a question for you, though. Are you suffering with back pain, neck pain, joint problems, muscle problems? I'm willing to bet you are, because there's millions of people in America suffering from these types of musculoskeletal problems. In fact, according to a recent study by the Mayo Clinic, over 57% of doctor appointments are made because of these problems. My guest today is a muscular system expert. Chris Vercelli is the founder and chief specialist at Nonfiction Fitness, which is the #1 muscle activation techniques practice here in Sarasota, Manatee County. Chris has lectured at the Florida College of Natural Health. He's been featured in local magazines, newspapers, and on local television right here on ABC 7 News. He's worked with hundreds of people of all ages and is even a muscle activation technique specialist with the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Baltimore Orioles. Chris is also the author of a new book, Improve Muscles, Improve Life. And he's going to share his insights with us on how muscle function can help prevent and even solve many common musculoskeletal problems. Chris, welcome to the show. I know you're a very busy guy. Your practice is thriving. You even had to cancel a number of appointments just to be here today. I appreciate that. Read a little bit about your background, how you got started in this. Really fascinating. Obviously, you've overcome a lot. At a young age. Why don't you tell us about that? Because I think it really leads into where you went with all this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. It's my pleasure. When I was 15 years old, I was diagnosed with ALL leukemia, which is a cancer that lives in the bone marrow cells. And I was put into a 26-month chemotherapy protocol that basically just battered my body from the inside out. I mean, I became extremely weak. Very overweight as well, which is kind of not the norm, but I was put on very high dose appetite stimulants to offset the nausea, so I actually gained a lot of weight because of that. And my health was just really, really bad. I could barely walk a block without almost passing out. I was 80 pounds heavier than I am right now, and just woke up every day thinking that this could be my last day, so it was a really scary time for me. And one day, I basically just had the eye-opening experience of how bad I was whenever I saw a lot of other people my age that were very thin and in shape, and they could keep up with these different physical activities. And I thought, I can't continue to live like this. I got to do something. So the very next day, I actually got up. I went into my dad's room, grabbed a set of dumbbells that he had, and I just started lifting them in any way that I knew I should to help exercise my muscles. And I actually got really into it from the get-go. It was tough, it was a really big challenge because I'm coming from this very sedentary life. But the more I did it, the better I felt and the stronger I got. And eventually I started getting really into my nutritional habits and going on different diets. I actually ended up in about 22 months losing 80 pounds of body fat, putting on 50 pounds of muscle, and physically being able to do anything I wanted. So I felt like I was on top of the world. I'd conquered cancer, I'd conquered obesity, I'd conquered this weakness that was, like what a 90-year-old man who doesn't do anything would have. And I started thinking about what I wanted to do as a career. And the one thing I could think of was that I wanted to help people get healthier. I wanted to help them get more fit. So I actually applied for a job as a personal trainer at my local gym, and I got a call from a guy who was the go-to guy in the area for personal training, for exercise, prescription, stuff like that. He had a master's degree and a lot of experience in the field. And he said, well, if you want to work for me, you've got to take this one particular course. And I said, well, what is it? And he explained it to me. It was a very advanced course on joint mechanics, muscle mechanics, basically how the musculoskeletal system worked, how to exercise safely without a lot of risk, and how to kind of work around different physical issues. So I took this course, and there were 15 other trainers from this company that took this, and they were the top guys in the entire organization. And surprisingly, I was actually one of only 2 people that passed that course, and I had no experience at all. And so when he saw that, he said, "Wow, you've really got some potential here. You know, you're pretty smart with this stuff, so you need to work for me." And so I asked him the first day I started working for him. I said, "How do I get really good? How do I become the best at this?" And ever since then, I've just followed his directions, and it's led me to where I am. Now, the way that I kind of got into this muscular activation techniques work is that I actually started attracting a lot of people as a personal trainer that had a lot of problems. You know, I mean, like you mentioned in the intro, 57.5% of doctor visits are made because of these types of problems. So there's a lot of people walking around with, joint pain and, various types of ailments. And a lot of those people wanted to exercise. They wanted to get healthy. They thought, strengthening my body is going to help me, so I should do it. So most of them were attracted to me because I had this background, and I could kind of talk to them in a way that made them feel like they could trust me because I kind of knew what I was talking about. And so we started to exercise, and I was astounded at how little a lot of these people could do without these issues getting worse. I'd have people lift very, very small amounts of weight, and maybe their shoulders would hurt or their back, and I'm basically trying to whittle down their exercise program into these like very, very, very gentle exercises that almost give them like no benefit at all, but also don't make them worse. And this was about 3 to 4 months into my personal training career, and I thought there's got to be a better way. Right. There's got to be a way to actually help people overcome these problems so that they can be more active, exercise more, get all the benefits of that, but without hurting themselves, making themselves worse.
Right.
So I started to kind of explore that, and the guy who had hired me had actually brought down a gentleman from Connecticut who was an instructor for the Muscle Activation Techniques program. And he worked with some of our clients while he was down, and I actually worked with him a little bit, and my mom, my dad, my wife. And I was so impressed with what he did that I knew that this was really, really key. And so I went to a lecture that was put on by the founder of the technique, and everything he said just made perfect sense. It was like...
Can you give us a little bit of a picture about what this technique is all about? What does it address?
Sure. Yeah, so basically there's a problem within muscles that causes them to not function properly. There's not adequate signals being sent from the neurological system to the muscle. And the muscles have this inability to perform their functions. And when the muscles have that inability to perform those functions, normal, everyday activities can sometimes be very difficult, restrictive, or painful.
We're going to have to go to break right now. Chris, this is fascinating. We're going to come back and talk about how your muscles, what you can do to improve this and make your muscles work better. So stay with us. Hey, thanks for staying with us. I'm here with Chris Vercelli, Nonfiction Fitness. We're talking about muscles and why people are having so many joint and back and problems and their muscles aren't functioning right. Chris, tell us more about that.
Well, as I mentioned, the neurological system can sometimes not be sending adequate signals to the muscle. And when that happens, the muscles can't create proper movement, so we get like tight and restricted, which can cause a lot of discomfort in and of itself. We also have this issue that causes these imbalances within the muscle system from this neurological issue, and they kind of pull in an uneven fashion. And just like if we were to have an uneven pull, say on the car axle of our car, we'd have an uneven distribution of the weight of our car, causing a wear and tear on our tires that's a little bit excessive. We can have this in different places on our body as well. So maybe we have a lot of things pulling in one direction but not another, and the weight is not being distributed through our spine, let's say, and that can cause uneven wear and tear, which can lead to back problems. We also have this inability to be protected from these different stresses that we might encounter during normal physical activity. Maybe we're running on a tennis court, or we're swinging a golf club, or we're lifting a weight, and our muscles can't help protect us from those particular stresses, so they create some sort of a pain response telling us we need to stop. So that's what can happen when the muscles aren't functioning well, and it impedes our normal active life.
So people get this pain, which causes, pain is usually caused by inflammation of some sort. And it seems like everybody's out of balance. I mean, I've met with chiropractors and massage people, and they're always telling me, well, this is out of balance, and this is twisted, and one leg's shorter than another. So we've all got these problems, and it's because of the muscles not being aligned correctly, or?
Yeah, so if you think of it like a tug of war, right? If you got a bunch of strong guys on one side and a bunch of weak guys on the other, where's the rope going to go, right? It's going to go to the strong side. So if I had maybe just around a spine, let's say, some muscles on one side not pulling the same as on the other side, where's the vertebrae going to go? It's
So
going
if
to
you
go
go to your
the
doctor,
stronger
he's
side.
going to give you some pain medication to numb the problem, which isn't going to solve the problem. You're still going to be imbalanced. So what is your approach, and how does your technique help with that? And how do you diagnose it?
Well, you have to have a comprehensive evaluation done to really know where those problems exist. Because people have the ability to compensate for these problems. I mean, sometimes because maybe our foot hurts, we put more weight onto the other side, which can cause maybe some hip pain on that side. But is it really a hip problem, or is it an opposite foot problem? Right? So you have to be able to look at all those things. You have to look at the mechanics of the body. How's the body compensating for these different problems? And then you can start to see the interrelationships between things. You know, I might see that, you know, a foot is creating some issues up into the hip or back area. I might see that, you know, a hip is creating some knee problems. I might see that, you know, a spine misalignment is creating some shoulder problems or various things like that. So we kind of have to see the whole picture and then figure it out from there.
And how do you determine that? You say you see that, but you know, what do you use to diagnose that?
Well, so if you look at those three functions of muscle, you can look at a person's body and see what's going on. So you look at how they move. So you see where the restrictions are in their ability to move by looking at things side by side. So if they have a lot of range of motion on one side but not on the other side in some particular direction, that'd be a big red flag. If they had some sort of misalignment that you could actually visually see, that'd be a big red flag. And then we also have these series of muscle tests. We have over 300 of these actually, and they're kind of similar to the types of tests that somebody would have when they get their tendon tapped with a rubber mallet. They're not exactly the same, but they're very similar. And the muscle has to react to that type of test by contracting. If we see that the muscle can't do that, then we know that there's a problem there, and that's called muscle inhibition. That's what's at the root of this problem. So that's what we're looking for in that evaluation.
So once you determine you've got this inhibition going on with your muscle, it's not functioning properly, how do you address it?
Well, first of all, we have to identify all the areas of the body that are affected. And then we have to prioritize which ones we need to work on first and kind of work down the list. Now, through this process, we can get to the groups of muscles that are the biggest culprits in whatever's going on with the body. And it's a very simple process, actually, to get a muscle to come back to its normal function again. That's what we call muscle activation. That's why it has that name, activation. And it involves typically some direct pressure to the muscle attachment site into the bone that's done in a very special way, or a particular type of exercise that's done in a very unique position at a very low level of intensity, very unlike any other exercise somebody would get in like rehab or training.
Yeah, I mean, the body is quite miraculous, but it's also very deceiving because you could have a pain on this side and it could be coming from something else. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely.
And so you got to test the whole body. You can't just say, okay, well, you have inflammation there and we're going to massage it or we're going to align it or we're going to numb it or whatever. You got to get to the root of the problem and you got to look at the big picture. So it sounds like what you're saying to me.
Mm-hmm.
So does this work for everybody? I mean, I know you work with some sport athletes, but how about, you know, elderly people and the average Joe out there who's just dealing with these pains for years?
Well, funny you mentioned that. My office is actually located within a 5,000 square foot fitness center that's part of the Meadows Country Club of all places. So, you know, I mean, you think of a country club type demographic. I mean, you've got, you know, 65, 70, 75 plus year old folks that are trying to remain active. That's the bulk of the people that I work with. Day in and day out. I mean, the athletes are here now, spring training, you know, I work with a lot of them, but typically it's, you know, those types of folks. But this type of problem is not age dependent either. I've actually worked on my 7-year-old son and found inhibited muscles on his body. So this isn't something that just crops up with age.
It can take as simple thing as like a fall or hitting your head or twisting the wrong way or lifting the wrong thing, right?
Yeah. Even some nutritional habits that we have can actually create some of this impeded communication. You know, certain inflammatory foods, certain things that we might be allergic to but not know it. lack of sleep, dehydration. I mean, everything takes
Stress?
its toll. Stress. Everything takes its toll on the nervous system, and the muscles are affected by that just like any other part of our body would. So a lot of times you have to go through those factors as well to find the things that are the bigger contributors.
So it sounds like this can really work for anybody at any age.
Yeah, there's some people that I would say are not quite ready for it. I mean, if people are in such excruciating pain that they can't lie down, turn over, they can't lift their arm, their leg, or anything like that, I wouldn't work with them under those circumstances.
How would you say this is different than therapy? I mean, I've seen people where they couldn't raise their arm and they go, they spend weeks going to physical therapy and they get the, muscle stim and the massage and all that. How is this different?
Well, the main difference is that nobody else is particularly looking for muscle inhibition. That's the only thing we're looking for. That's the main thing we're concerned about. Now, everything else that's out there has its value. I think PT is great. I think chiro is great. I think massage is great. I'll actually refer people to these practitioners at certain times. Like the person in that terribly painful state, I would maybe send them to a PT to get some treatment before I would work with them. But if people are not addressing muscle inhibition, they're missing a big piece of the puzzle.
We're going to go to break right now. Check out our sponsors. When we get back, we're going to hear more about muscle inhibition. Stay with us. We're back with Chris Vercelli, Nonfiction Fitness, talking about his technique that's helping thousands of people. Chris, what are some of the signs of this muscle inhibition that you've been talking about?
Well, there's a lot of them. Some of them are noticeable more so with movement than anything else. Like if you go into a position and it hurts to go into that position, that's a definite sign. If you have tightness or restriction when doing certain movements, that's a sign. If you have any kind of activity or movement-induced pain, that's a big red flag. So, you'll hear from a lot of people, I'm okay until I do this. Those are the types of people that definitely have muscle inhibition.
Do you find people are getting immediate results? If I've got a hip pain or shoulder pain, whatever, I mean, what kind of time frame are we talking about? I'm sure everybody's different, but can you give me any generalizations?
Well, you can get an immediate change to the function of the muscle, and that's verified through our testing, and it's always felt by the user. The longer
Does your machine
process,
test the change in that inhibition?
Interesting you bring that up. There are machines called EMGs that will test muscle contraction, and we've actually seen up to a 276% increase in that from just one activation.
Wow.
It's pretty amazing.
So is there anybody that's not a good fit for this program?
Well, to be quite honest, anybody who is very, very sedentary, not doing anything active whatsoever, is probably going to have a little bit of a tough time with this process because it is very active. There are some things that you have to do movement-wise and exercise-wise, and it is a process. I mean, I will typically see people 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks during just the first initial phase of this process. So I never tell anybody like, hey, you're going to walk out of here feeling like $1 million because that's false. That's a lie. And I'm very honest with people when it comes to setting up expectations. Tell them like it is.
This has really obviously become a passion for you. Your whole life you spent hundreds of hours learning about this and improving your craft. And this book, Improve Muscles, Improve Life, how can people get this?
Well, there is a way for them to get this on my website, nonfictionfitness.com. They can go there and put in their name and email, and it will be sent to them.
Giving it out for free.
Yeah, if they want the electronic one. If they want the physical copy, you can get on Amazon.
So what are people going to get out of reading this?
Well, you'll get
better understanding.
You'll get a better understanding of what muscles do, what happens when they don't function right, and there's about 20 or 30 different stories of things that have happened with clients of mine from going through this process, so they'll leave feeling encouraged and hopeful.
Why don't you tell us about some of these stories, because I think it would help to really get a concrete understanding of what changes might be expected.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's three main changes that we're looking to create. One is that we want to increase strength, one that we want to improve flexibility, and one that we want to accelerate healing. And with that, we also help to reduce the risk of injury. So I'll talk about kind of a strength example first. I had a guy, his name was Walter. He came to see me last season, and he was having a lot of difficulty with this one particular movement of lifting his leg, especially when he'd get in and out of the bathtub or he would put on his pants. When I'd have him lie down on his back and try to lift his leg, he couldn't do that more than 2 times without a lot of pain and a lot of fatigue. Within a 10-day period, we were actually able to get him to do that over 10 times without the pain or the fatigue in just a 10-day period. So we went up about 500% in 10 days in his strength. I've seen other times where people have had a really difficult time getting up out of chairs or getting upstairs without getting fatigued or without having any kind of irritation. And that improves very quickly. As far as the flexibility goes, I've had people that have been very restricted in certain movements that felt like they just were going to stay that way. I mean, even one of my baseball pitchers, for instance, he was told after a shoulder surgery he'd only be able to get 45 degrees of range of motion on his throwing arm, and that was when he was 17. 2-3 weeks of working on that shoulder, we got him up to 80 degrees of rotation there, and that was after 15 years.
Surgeries, avoid some of these replacements by?
Absolutely. I had a guy, Lim, who came in who thought he needed a hip replacement because every movement he did with his hip literally caused pain, every single one of them. And we got him stable and strong enough and functioning well enough to where he could do 360 degrees of motion with no pain after about 5 weeks.
It seems like everything's interrelated. I mean, if you've got pain, if you're misaligned, and all of a sudden your cartilage and your bones are wearing away your cartilage, and all of a sudden now you got pain, and I think what's amazing about what you do is you're trying to get to the root of the problem. You're not just treating a symptom and saying let's make that pain feel better, because that's not going to fix it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pain's an indicator of something that's wrong. It's a check engine light. You can't put tape over the check engine light and expect for the engine to fix itself. Yeah. It has to be addressed at its root.
Tell me about another example of people that have been helped.
Well, I had a client, Denny, who had to cancel a 3-month vacation that he and his new wife were going to take 2 years ago because of horrible sciatic pain. I mean, he could barely get out of bed for the first 3-4 weeks, went to physical therapy, got to the point where he could actually sleep, but couldn't do anything on his feet for more than a couple minutes without a lot of pain running down his leg. And after just a few times of seeing him, noticed that he had significant inhibition in his hip muscles, was able to strengthen that and improve that function, and he was able to do long walks. He's actually up to walking 4 miles now and still pain-free, and this is years later.
I bet his wife was happy with you.
His wife was ecstatic. She says I'm like one of her sons. She had severe sacroiliac pain for pretty much since her teenage years. That was due to a severe restriction in movement of that hip that was caused by muscle inhibition. And after we got that to move properly and got those muscles to function, she doesn't have those episodes nearly as frequently anymore. And she has to keep up with some of her maintenance exercise. She comes to see me regularly, as does he. So this isn't a fix. It's maintaining function over time, but they're living much happier lives now.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I've always heard. It's like you're not just going to stretch once and your muscles are going to be stretched. You've got to keep at it, but you got to get on a regular plan that's working for you. You got to dig out the root of the problem, and you got to work on it probably every day.
Absolutely.
And you can't have that sedentary lifestyle, and as you said, I mean, your diet obviously had an amazing result for you. Mm-hmm. How can people get more information about this program, and is there anybody else doing it?
Well, I'm pretty much the only guy in Sarasota. I mean, there is one other gentleman who actually works with me a little bit. I will refer people to him from time to time, but I'm probably the primary person, really. And most often I tell people, grab a copy of my book, check that out, read it, internalize that information, and give me a call. I do consultations with people. I review their health history, injury history. Then I do those comprehensive evaluations. And then I create a plan, and we talk about it. And, 99 times out of 100, people are like, yeah, this makes perfect sense. I want to do it. So that's how I would recommend. And nonfictionfitness.com is the place they can get that book.
Chris, I admire what you're doing, and I'm sure your clients are appreciative also. I'm sure you can give Chris a call, check out his website. This is really important stuff for you to get to the root of problems. We thank you for watching. Watch us next week when Dr. Bo Martinson will be on talking about omega oils and how that can dramatically increase your health without having to eat fish every day of your life. Have a great day.